good evening, and welcome to Sis Let's Talk Leadership. My name is Christy Barnes.
And I'm Melissa Walsh.
And this is where we unmask the myths.
And we on the journey.
And today we have a special guest. Her name is Winnie, and we are delighted to have her here. We're going to dive a little deeper into how we know Miss Winnie. But our topic today is success isn't linear, the detours that define us, because we're going to go into how Winnie was an RT and she has taken a complete pivot into something else, although similarly related, but taking a complete pivot into something else. So we're going to let Winnie introduce herself, and then we'll just dive into the conversation like we normally do.
That's great. Hey, thanks so much, Christy, for having me. And Melissa, thank you. Winnie Sywulak. I've been a respiratory therapist for many years, since the 80s. And where I started my journey and where I wound up is very different. It's a really crooked journey. The path, as you said, is not linear. So I work for Draeger here in Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact, and I am currently a senior marketing manager in charge of clinical education and have been doing this job for about 7 or so years now. Real excited to be here to talk to you about my journey.
Yes, and we are happy to have you. So I think the main question that everybody wants to know with that introduction is how? How did you do it? What did it take? And how did you end up where you are right now with Draeger?
Well, that is a really great question because like I mentioned, it's very crooked and windy road. I started my clinical jobs back in the 80s at my first job at University of Pennsylvania in the NICU. And I was on night shift. And as a respiratory therapist, you think that you're going to be at the bedside and that's where you're going to be for a very long time. But I'll tell you that I learned so much, and I just wanted to suck up all of the learning and training from everybody who surrounded me there, from the nurses to the physicians to the other respiratory therapists as well. And I just loved being in the NICU. And what I found really inviting is being at the bedside with these small babies and with these very needy patients. But what I really loved is the caregivers and the patients' families that would come in and ask questions. And I'd be able to talk to them about what's happening with their baby and why their baby needed some extra support as they were continuing to grow. So I knew education and training was going to be a part of my long-term goal, but had no idea I would get to the point where I am today. I went through many different paths and a few different jobs that led me to Draeger about 7 years ago. So it's been fun so far.
Oh, man, that's good. That is really good. Melissa, yeah, I was going to say how we went into meeting Winnie.
Yeah. So something that people have heard from us before is we started this podcast really on just hope and a whole lot of faith. And one of the things that we did is we started it just before we went to a respiratory conference. Then by the time we got to the conference, what we were welcomed with was just a lot of embrace for the topics we were discussing and the overall theme of catering to female leaders, and whether it's emerging leaders or upcoming leaders or people that have been in leadership for a long time, and to learn from them. And I remember Ed Coombs approached us and said, hey, you need to talk to Winnie. You really would love to have her. She has great experience. She's done so many great things. She would be great to have as a guest and to have as somebody that can share her journey and encourage others to continue forward to achieve their goals. And the funny thing was we went into the vendor hall to kind of go stalk a little bit to try to find you. And I found the wrong vendor and we went to the wrong booth and we actually asked for you. And we're like,
we did.
For us. So I was like, my God, what happened to Winnie? And then I turn around to look, I see the Draeger sign and I'm like, Christy, this is so embarrassing. We're at the wrong booth. She's like, girl, I can't believe we're like, oh no, she works here. And then thankfully we did go to the right booth. You weren't there when we got there. So we just kind of like hung out for a second. And then they're like, actually, she's right there. But you were talking to someone.
Yeah.
And we were about to walk away, be like, okay, well, she's busy. We have somewhere we need to get to. And it just so happened that at the moment we were trying to leave, you walked over to us. And I think one of the things that really kind of resonated with me, and I believe with Chrissy too, because it's something that we've made part of our leadership journey as well, is just your overall kindness and embracing of us and just willingness. You're like, oh yeah, like you didn't even ask us any questions. Like, our podcast could have been about the most random thing ever. And you're like, oh no, I'm there. You got me. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about how you and authentically the person you are has helped you as you navigate the next journey? So, obviously, you mentioned you started at the clinical bedside night shift NICU. What was next for you?
So I want to make a comment before I tell you that piece of it. I never heard that story before, that you were in another booth. That's so funny.
We've never told it.
We
I
were.
love that. I love that. Thank you.
That's how
Thank you for telling
embarrassing
me.
it was.
Something that
And
I would do, I'd be standing there, where is she?
mhm. Mhm.
So I love that. Thank you so much. And no, I never give up. When I hear somebody wants to talk or even just to chat
Mhm.
about anything, I'm there. I want to hear your story. I love to just exchange ideas and things like that. So first that I wanted to mention, when I was in the NICU, there was this one baby, Andre. My goodness. He wound up being there for 16 months. The mom was absolutely beautiful, absolutely loved spending time with her. He spent, like I said, his first 16 months there, and we were preparing him to go home. Well, I was so intrigued. How are we going to manage this baby at home with mom? Mom's not a respiratory therapist. Mom's not a nurse. Mom's not a clinician. She's never done this before. Well, we wound up taking Andre home, and I was so intrigued by the home care company that I said, well, can I work for you? Because I want to make sure Andre is going to be taken care of because he's been a part of my life for 16 months. I want to continue to be a part of his life. And so I moved from the NICU into home care and
Wow.
took care of the technology dependent infants in the home
Mhm.
and families. So we were able to bring ventilator dependent patients or tracheostomy patients in the home back in the early 90s.
Mhm.
And then we taught moms and dads and caregivers at home how to care for their tracheostomy patients. I shouldn't even call them patients, for their babies, for their
Mhm.
family members, for their sons, for their daughters, for their, siblings and for their spouses. So that was so incredibly rewarding to be a part of the home care journey of patients and families and teaching them and educating them. And I think that was my next step that I was so incredibly proud of. And so I continued down my path. I'm very maternal as well as loving being an educator. I always loved taking care of patients, I'm caregiver at heart. So I thought about a couple years in, I went to our leadership team and I said, these families never get out of their homes. And so the next big thing that I worked on was bringing our ventilator dependent children with their family to the Philadelphia Zoo. How was I going to bring all
My
of these
goodness.
children to the zoo, make sure
Mhm.
they're safe, make sure they're cared for, make sure there's
Yeah.
oxygen, ventilators, all of these things. And
Mhm.
I will have to say it took about 6 months of planning, working with the
Mhm.
Philadelphia Zoo to actually coordinate all the needs that we had. And we were able to bring the families to the Philadelphia Zoo, and the children who had been in their homes and in
Mhm.
hospitals and back into their homes, just back and forth to clinical needs, finally got to be a family in an
Yeah.
environment that they never thought they could be able to do. And
Mhm.
the most rewarding thing at the end of the day was one of the moms coming up to me, giving me a hug and just saying, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. This is the first time that I felt like we were just a regular old family.
That is so
And
sweet.
yeah, and so I started that by just an idea, and I went to our leadership team at the home care company. It was United Healthcare Services. They're no longer in business, but boy, were they were nervous. They were like, "Are you sure we can do this?" And
Mhm.
then boy, and we put it together, and it was
Mhm.
phenomenal. It was
Mhm.
phenomenal. And we were on the local news and all of that and got to see
Aw.
monkeys and elephants and all sorts of things. And the children were just so smiles from, ear to ear. It was the most rewarding thing. And
Wow.
I'll tell you something too is that, people think that you become a leader because it's
Mhm.
ingrained in you and you're dubbed a leader. No, You become a leader because that's what you work towards,
Mhm.
because you're there to lift others up.
Mhm.
And I knew that that was a part of my life, that I needed to find something that's rewarding for others. So, how can I make a difference? So, I have always in the back of my mind, how can I make a difference in the world
Mhm.
that I live, no matter where I am in my career?
Mhm.
So, from hospital into home care. And then I started doing sales and marketing for home care companies. And then I moved into the manufacturing world, device manufacturing. And
Wow.
that's where it brought me to I really wanted to be more involved in education and training. How can I make a difference? And what type of impact can I have? And so I think that's what Ed Coombs saw in me as well. I've done management, I've done, things here and there across my career. I've come up against walls. I've lost my job for various different reasons,
Mhm.
downsizing or, change management, whatever the reason is. But I didn't let it stop what my ultimate goal was. And my ultimate goal was making a difference and being a part of the educational journey of individuals, regardless of where they are in their journey,
Mhm.
in their understanding. So what brought me to Draeger now gives me the opportunity to help educate our sales team, our clinical team, as well as our customers on all of the different products in the ICU, in the NICU, in the OR. And so developing that type of education with different media has just been very rewarding, has been and continues to be rewarding.
Wow. I think a common theme of everything that you just said and what I'm hearing along your journey is passion. And it kind of tied right into what Melissa was asking you, like how did you develop and get to where you are just even as a person? But what I hear is passion. And through every avenue, through that little question or those wheels turning in your mind to figure out what purpose can I bring here? How impactful can I be? What influence do I bring to this particular role, no matter what the role is? It led you ultimately to what your purpose is. And so I say it all the time that your passion will lead to your purpose. And then another thing that I heard as an overall theme is a gift. A gift, and we talk about that often. Everyone has a gift. Everybody is unique. Everybody brings something to the table, right?
Absolutely.
When you're in healthcare, the common theme or the common denominator for everyone is usually serve. And so everything that you have done and connecting the dots, even when you had to make a pivot outside of technically respiratory, even though it's, tied together slightly, is that you were serving. So the gift is not for you, it's for those that you are servicing. So figure out how you need to use it because it's never for us. It's always for those that are in our care, whether it's personal, professional, whatever it is. And so that's what I heard you state in all of that. And I mean, you don't find that often. And I think even there are some adults who don't even know that yet. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't know what they're passionate about. But I don't know. That's just kind of what I heard
I
in
think
the overall
also,
theme.
Winnie, you highlighted something so awesome where I think sometimes fear can stifle us or fear
Mm,
can drive us. And then, like,
mm,
even when you started in the NICU, a lot of RTs will shy away from working in that type of space because they're very concerned about, oh my gosh, look at how tiny they are. Everything's super, super small, and all of these other things that they will say. So, going from there and then recognizing that you just cared so much about a patient you took care of and the impact not only that you had on them, but the impact they had on you as a
mhm,
clinician to then say, hey, I want to make a difference in a different way by providing care in the home and not
mhm,
stopping there, but then challenging yourself and even your team to do something that other people were scared of because of liability reasons, because of challenges or logistics of it all. But it was great that you took that desire to surpass the fear of failure in anything
yeah,
you did to make other people's dreams come true. Like for those
mm,
families that didn't seem attainable or feasible, and
mhm,
you and the team you worked with made it that way. And now
mhm,
those families, I think, we don't think back to like the 90s when those things were happening, or like even the 2000s of these programs that are
mhm,
created to help us, open these doors for families. And even in your current role, it's creating those relationships and those connections with your team to continue to help in a different way. But it seems to me that you you're very anchored on making sure that you are continuously making a difference for others. Which I think Christy has said this in many of our episodes, where your passion will drive your level of success, how good you are at something because your heart lives in it. With that being said, obviously, I'm sure that even when you had all these great ideas for the next step in your career, in this, path that you created for yourself because it worked for you, what are some things that helped you prepare for that next step, or say, I'm ready for a change, or I'm ready to try this? What are some things or thought process that helped you make those decisions?
Well, I think early on, I was afraid to fail.
Mhm.
As I grew, I knew failure was actually okay because I learned from failure. So I think that as I grew over the years, everything had to be perfect. And making mistakes and learning from those mistakes is what made me even that much better. And I also believe that sometimes you can't plan for everything. And
Mhm.
if you are okay with not planning, which at sometimes I'm not, believe it, I like to have things very organized and in just such a way. But there are times where you can't plan for everything. You
Mhm.
have to be prepared to and be able to pivot,
Mhm.
and you have to allow yourself to do that
Mhm.
because that's okay.
Mhm.
They're the greatest points of my career that I learned from. The biggest challenges, the biggest, maybe the biggest falls that I can think of over, maybe 10, 15 years ago that may have seemed like the absolute worst time for something to happen or transpire actually made me even that much better. And I
Mhm.
learned so much more and I accepted where I was because it's okay to restart.
It is.
And you have to be prepared to be able to restart
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
reset.
And starting from a different foundation, right? Like what
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
said, you know, things not
Absolutely.
going the way that you expected them or had hoped or dreamed that they would go. Like, I
Yes.
remember grieving what I at one point felt like failure in something, just to learn that that wasn't failure. It was a moment of transformation, like going through the fire and
Mhm.
learning all of these skills.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until maybe a year or two later learning like, wow, I didn't
Mhm.
realize that's why I needed to go through those things and
Right.
learn those and acquire those skills, because now I'm applying them and it's such a different experience than the first time it happened to me.
Yeah.
How have you helped others how have you mentored other team members, colleagues, friends to help them achieve goals like that?
I think first you listen. I think you just need to close your mouth and open your ears and just listen to what their passion is. Where do they think that they want to go? And then ask questions. Ask questions. I can think of a few people is, what is your ultimate goal? What do you want to get out of your next step? And how can I help you do that? Is it a tool that you need to learn? Is it something you need to practice? In my role now, some of the training and education that we do for our sales and our clinical team members, they'll ask, or I'll ask, what are my favorite 3 Ps? And they'll all roll their eyes and they'll say, practice, practice, practice. And so for years, I would say, yes, you're right. Practice, practice, practice makes a difference. Well, I changed it up this year. And again, the sales team would roll their eyes and say, okay, what are your 3 Ps, Winnie? It's practice, 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 right? And I'm like, nope, changed it up on you.
Switched it
It's
up.
prepare, practice, and then perform. So, no matter where you are in your life, if you're not prepared to practice, then your performance is not going to be on target. And that's
Mhm.
in anything that you do, no
Mhm.
matter what. We know clinicians need to stay on top of the latest research and how to take care of patients, ultimately, how to improve their patient outcomes. But we also know that star athletes, have to practice, practice in order for them to achieve their goals. If we want to improve what we're eating and how we're eating, we need to make food a little bit differently or set the stage a little bit differently. So in any portion of our life, it's a matter of preparation and being prepared for that performance. So I like to sit and listen to others if they come to me with questions or if they come to me with, asking advice. I just sit and listen first, and then I start asking questions.
Yeah. So you meet people where they are. You learn to
Absolutely.
adapt to what it is that they need. And
Absolutely.
asking first always takes the I or the me out of the picture. And it
Hmm.
allows you to focus more on the individual that you're assisting or providing that support
Yeah.
or mentorship to. Everything that we've kind of discussed, like within the last 3 minutes, has come up actually between the past 24 hours at work. And it's the success and failure. How does it make people feel? What advice would you give to individuals who feel as if success has no association with failure? And it's actually the exact opposite, which is what you just stated, Winnie. And that was something that I had mentioned to a group of volunteer students today, actually, who were trying to figure out what portion of healthcare they wanted to go into. And everything that you just mentioned, what just stuck out for me for everything coming like full circle in
Hmm.
a sense. Because honestly, for those individuals, and even though they were high school students, that's kind of like where it starts. And you mentioned earlier, like sometimes we feel like we have to have everything all planned out, and it doesn't necessarily happen that way. So the best thing you can do is be willing to adapt, be flexible, pivot, plan, prepare. But we still can do the practice, 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 and kind of go from there. And not putting themselves in a box and getting out of their own way. And then also another thing that I think that you hit on is providing yourself grace, because we give so much grace to other people, and we
Yep.
talk about that a lot, but you have to be like intentional with that with yourself. And those are all things that I'm hearing you say that you've done along your journey into coming into Draeger. So I think that that's good. I think our listeners are going to get a lot from that.
Yeah.
Christy, do you have
I
a
love that. I love that reminder of giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
I often will say that to people, and that stops them in their track. You need to give yourself some grace,
Hmm.
and then just be quiet.
Yeah.
Just let it sink in.
Hmm. One of my friends always says that's why you have two ears and one mouth.
Mm,
You're supposed to be listening more than you speak. And I was like, oh, that's a good way to put
that's right. That's
it.
what my mama always
Yeah,
told me.
yeah, yeah.
Use, listen to twice more than you talk.
Then you talk. Absolutely. Yeah.
I do have a question for you because I feel like you've had a very similar path into leadership as Winnie has, where like you started as a bedside clinician and then ventured out into something completely different. Can you talk a little bit more about how those kind of not pivots, I feel like alternative paths actually
Yeah.
made you a much stronger, more intuitive, more empathetic leader?
Yeah. At first, I can say that when those opportunities came about, they weren't things that you heard of when it came to respiratory. They actually were positions that were held by pretty much only nursing or other people within the healthcare industry. So when I initially heard about it, fear definitely struck in. It made me feel as if, no, this is not something that I need to do. Oh, but no, I can do it. A lot of self talk, I'll put it that way. So I did. I did bedside for quite some time. I too am in love with the pediatric neonatal population of people, and they do bring out a different side of compassion and empathy when you are caring for them, because you're caring for the entire family as well as the patient itself. It's slightly different from adult care. But I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And then a senior clinical liaison position became available on the business development side for a long term acute care facility. And so I'm like, senior clinical liaison, what is that? Okay, I know what a liaison is. It's the, gap in between this and that. And, you're the middle person, put it that way. But what am I the middle person in between? And why is it on the business development side versus being a bedside clinician? So once I dived a little bit more into what that looked like, it was being on the business development side, meaning that it was a referral driven facility and referrals needed to be taken from the acute care setting in order to drive the business, I guess you would say,
Mm,
to bring in the patients.
mhm,
And so it was built off of building relationships, knowing who your key stakeholders are, knowing who those individuals are who are going to drive the business, whether it's social work, case management, doctors, and anybody else. And so I knew that I was good with building relationships, but I wanted to know how to connect the dots between that.
mhm,
So I went to the interview and I got it. And what I found myself doing in that interview was kind of like doing a proposal or a pitch to say, choose me because I'm respiratory and that's who you really need in this particular role
Mhm.
versus nursing. Because long term acute care, you're taking care of those vintage trait patients, the ones who are difficult to wean, the ones who
Mhm.
need those 25 to 30 extra days in order to move forward with their next step. So they're right at the brink of being able to go home, but not necessarily. And so I would say I did it out of fear, but I did that and it changed my life. It gave me a new perspective on not only what we have learned in school, which I'm pretty sure they're totally not doing this now because I'm 16 years in, but back then it was more so of, bedside, bedside, bedside. Nobody talks about the things that you can do outside of respiratory.
Mhm.
Nobody even talks about the opportunities that may even come about with being a bedside clinician, just in general. And so once I learned those things and once I realized that I kind of got my foot in the door, I went all in. I learned everything that I could. But then what I also did is I reached back and hired my own team and other respiratory therapists to let them know, hey, and I literally remember calling and having that conversation. Look, I know you haven't heard of this, but you can do it. This is it. And then explaining it to them. And they're like, oh, okay. And brought on so many individuals. And the feedback that I received from doing that was like, oh my goodness, like I did not know. But I say all that to say, step out and do it with fear. Step
Mhm.
out and do it with fear is something that I learned on that journey. Because when I did that, then because it's technically marketing of a service, Home Infusion had heard about my numbers and sales and things of that nature. And they asked me to come and build a team over at their facility. Now, Home Infusion, everybody knows respiratory therapy, Home Infusion, what? Like,
Yeah.
how does that even go together? But just another opportunity that came about that I just went all in full throttle, learned as much as I could, and then tried to reach back to help the next therapist as well.
Yeah.
But I think the common denominator and the common theme around all of that was don't be afraid. Like step out,
Exactly.
do it afraid, step out on faith, learn all you can and always remain teachable. If you continue to chase the
Mhm.
titles, the money and all of those other things, you lose yourself in it. You don't stay true to who your authentic self is. And then you become driven by other things outside of that passion that we talked about earlier and that gift that you have to serve individuals. You start to lose it because you're focusing on the wrong thing. And so that has been kind of like the advice and that I've provided from my journey of navigating from bedside to director of business development. Then I went into Home Infusion as a regional account executive, and then I did a couple of contract work because contract is different too.
Mhm.
There's a lot that goes into that. But then all in all, just reaching back and helping the other people. Never forget where you came from.
That's right.
Never forget where you came from. You were once in these high school student shoes, the ones who I spoke to today. We were once in those who were in respiratory school. We were once there. Things may slightly change. Healthcare is always evolving, but ultimately, we are always there. And for the individuals who were there today, they weren't necessarily seeking out respiratory, they were seeking out career paths within healthcare in general. And I mean, of course, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a respiratory therapist. However, my advice was more so to lean into that passion and what makes you happy and what your gift is to serve. And I know I keep saying that, but once you figure out what that is and you zone into it, then it takes you to where Winnie is. It takes you down the journey to where Melissa, the things that you have done, and it takes you to where, I've been as well. And so
Yeah.
hopefully that answered your question, but when I tell you I'm so passionate about that.
I love that. I love that. You never thought I graduated in 1987 from Gwinnett Mercy College at the time.
Mhm.
And I never, if you asked me back then what I'd be doing today, I would have never thought I'd be developing
Never.
e-learnings on e-learning platforms, doing educational opportunities through virtual reality and speaking to customers about consultative opportunities with how are you doing your workflow in your NICU and all of
Mhm.
these other things that are not truly respiratory care, but like you said, Christy, the foundation is in
Mhm.
respiratory.
It is.
And that's where my start, my love, my passion, as you said, that's where it started. And that's why it's given me the opportunity to grow into these other avenues.
No, yeah, I agree.
Awesome.
Love
That's
it.
fun. And that was kind of like the parallel I wanted to make because you both have very unique journeys. But I think something that I want to highlight is you exploring outside of how you started actually built upon the skill sets that you had, and it taught you new things, and it opened up doors that I think that most people will not consider are even available to them. So by asking the question, it was just for our listeners to better understand that sometimes where we're at today is not what we'll be in like a year. I mean, so much can change in a year. So much can change in a week, or sometimes it's just a 24-hour day, and it's embracing the change and knowing that yes, we can find you a mentor, find someone that will guide you, mentor you, encourage you, but also will give you the opportunities as well. But I think both of your journeys are really awesome because you both are so diverse in your experience, and that only adds to why you're both fantastic leaders within the realms that you are both serving in. So I think that was a great way to segue to a game if you want to play a game, Christy.
Sure.
Game time, game time.
Okay.
I'm open to it. Let's do it. Okay, so game time. So Melissa and I, we always want to unmask a little bit more about our guests. They know a little bit about us, but let's know a little bit more about you. So in doing so, it's very similar to this or that. And so we'll state it rapid fire for about, what we say, 5-10 seconds right off. And then we kind of just go from there. So there's a little fun to it.
Okay.
So if we're ready, let's get started. Skydiving or parasailing?
Parasailing.
I'll skydive. If I hit something parasailing because I didn't turn right, I think I'll be very sad.
Oh, I think I'm gonna do parasailing. Okay. Do you enjoy breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Breakfast, 100%.
I like brunch.
She's in between.
Gotta be in between.
Right, gotta be in between. I am a breakfast person all day. All day. I love meat.
Breakfast or
Yeah.
dinner every day.
Yeah, I love breakfast. And when I don't get it, I can tell. And so
Yeah.
can everyone else. Like,
People notice.
definitely got to start my day there. All right, heels or flats?
I like heels.
The heels. I'm
For
getting
me?
older though.
I understand. I think it depends on what type of heel. Because I am no longer a stiletto
No.
pointed. It has to be either a block heel, and then it cannot
Little
be.
platform.
There you go. And it has to be. I know this. No more than 2 inches.
No. I can't do that
No.
anymore.
No, can't do that. Not happening.
I'm already
Suns-
taller than my husband.
Hey, I understand. Sunset or sunrise?
Sunset.
It depends which coast I'm on. Sunrise on the East Coast, sunset on the West.
Okay, I'm with
Yeah.
you on that. I'm with you on that one. We
I
went to
like
Key
it
West.
over the water. I love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say. At Key West, we saw it over the water, and it was a completely different experience.
it is.
So yeah. Okay, last one. Are you a person who carries your cash with you, or are you a card individual?
I'm still cash.
I don't have any cash. It's bad.
I know.
I have cash.
I don't have.
I
an
think for
ounce.
the first time ever, I actually had my credit card on my phone, and I just tried it for the first time last week.
Wow.
look at you. You
Oh,
didn't let
wait,
Tina
how do you
stop
do that?
you.
Oh
You're
my
so adventurous.
goodness. Yes, definitely.
So
Last
old
week,
school.
yeah, I don't carry cash at all. I always say that once I have cash, especially if it's like lump sums of it, I don't know where it went. I spend it and I can't keep up with it. I want to be able to track all of my spending, and cash just never allows me to do that. And my husband's like, well, I mean, where did it go? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, that was fun. That was fun.
Thank you.
I'm sure they know you a little bit better now.
And everybody will go to the right booth to find you.
There, that's right. Oh my goodness. That was so funny. If someone had captured a picture of us standing at the wrong booth,
That
looking around, asking for Winnie, that would have been like, we could have been on America's Funniest Video.
yeah.
Like, seriously.
Oh yeah. Like,
Yeah,
why
that was
isn't
fun.
she here?
Yeah.
She works
Yeah,
here. What do you mean she's gone? Where'd she go?
right. And I remember them saying like, "I don't think we have a Winnie. Are
Yeah.
you sure?"
And I was like, no,
That
you definitely do.
she did. She was like, "No, you do have a Winnie." I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh,
they
that
said
is
they don't.
so funny. That is so
Yeah.
funny.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
gosh.
So
Well, I'm
that was
glad
a
we got
good
to see
game.
each other.
Yes, I'm glad we did as well. So we are wrapping things up. If you had to leave something with our listeners about success not being linear, you've given some great gems just throughout telling your entire journey. But what would you leave with them if you had to either summarize what we've stated or just something maybe we didn't get a chance to kind of like touch on? What would you say?
Well, don't be afraid to fail is number one.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that if it's scary, it means you're making a choice and you're making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So look for every opportunity that you possibly can because you never know what's at the end of the road. It could
Mm-hmm.
be your best decision that you ever made.
That's good.
That's really good. I think for me it is do something different because it'll teach you something.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And I think for me, it would be to get out of your own way.
Yeah,
Like when these opportunities come up, get out of your own way. Don't settle and become complacent that you don't even take on the challenges. You don't want new challenges. Get out of your own way. Don't put yourself in a box, but then also don't let anyone else put you in a box either. 'Cause if we can do it, you can do it.
absolutely.
Yes. So it was great to have you, Winnie. I'm pretty sure that your story is going to touch a lot of individuals who listen to this today. As Melissa and I always say, if someone, anyone just gets one gem, then our job has been done. And so we truly appreciate you being willing from the beginning, as she stated when we met you, to be a part of our journey and be a part of this podcast. And it was an honor to have you on here today.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And Melissa, it's always a pleasure. But thank you so much for tuning in to Sis Let's Talk Leadership. Everyone have an amazing night.